today we're going to be talking a bit about service management and business relationship management. I'm sure if you're on this webinar, you're in some way, shape, or form involved in the management or execution thereof. We're going to talk with Peter Lijnse from Instrumental BRM about how they can really work together to optimize business value. That's Peter. Peter is a longtime IT service management professional who's stood up the Instrumental BRM company a few years back. He is on the knowledge management team for the BRM Institute. I am also John Kleist III. I'm Vice President of Sales and Marketing here at Excalibur Data Systems. We're an Instrumental BRM partner. I was the 2012 ITSM USA Member of the Year. I only get to say that a couple of times a year and it sounds cool. Both of us have long-standing backgrounds in ITIL, service management, IT best practices, COVID, ISO 20000, acronym soup that is the world of IT service management. And Peter is a, let's go with world-renowned trombone player. He'll probably discount himself, but Peter is, you'll see the name Instrumental BRM because of Peter and their team's real outside interest of being involved in music. I'm going to quickly introduce you. I won't take more than 2 or 3 slides here, 3 minutes or less. I promise to introduce you to who Excalibur is, who Instrumental is, and then we'll get to the value pack session of Peter. So Excalibur is a long-standing ShareWall software partner. We were one of the first, if not the first, ShareWall software partners a little over 9 years ago. So strong background in implementation and consulting and other professional services around IT service management. We are in year 2 of standing up the business relationship management competence. So we do professional services, tooling, and such around BRM, IT best practices, lots of experience with service desk, help desk, knowledge management, creating dashboards that are actually valuable to the people who are trying to consume them. We signed a partnership late last year with a company called Talend for doing data integration fabric and creating big data lakes and leveraging the mass amounts of data that your enterprise is typically collecting and being able to drive some business value out of it, and lots of experience with automation in enterprise service management. So experience with automating HR, facilities, project management, portfolio management processes, traditionally in the ShareWall software platform. We're partnered, as I mentioned, with Instrumental, and we are all members of the BRM Institute. If you ever get a chance to go to a BRM Connect conference, I'd highly recommend it. One of the most amazing conferences I've ever been to. We're also partnered with a ShareWall UK partner called Celertis, who's created a tool set for documenting, managing, and optimizing your BRM and IT value optimization in your enterprise. We're also partnered with a couple other companies out there. I won't take the time to go through that as they're not really relevant to what we're talking about today. We are the exclusive distribution and services partner for the Convergence BRM IT value optimization solution, architected by Simon Kent. You can see Simon there on the right. He's a panelist on our call here. The solution was actually awarded the 2016 BRM Institute Trailblazer Award. So this is predominantly early adopter stuff as BRM is maturing. This is some trailblazing technology. There's not a plethora. Gerard from ShareWall likes to say there's 444 other people out there calling and trying to sell somebody an IT service management tool. Really, there's only a couple of players at this point who have really owned in and created tooling around business relationship management. So it's really about converging the business outcomes with your IT service initiatives, which is where Peter's really going to dive into, and providing that continual business value. As shadow IT and emerging technologies continue to penetrate the enterprise, IoT, virtual reality, augmented reality, if we can't get IT operations under control and get Mr. Senior Vice President the piece of software they're requesting in less than 6 weeks, we're not going to be relevant in the enterprise anymore. They'll just go to companies like Salesforce and buy what they need and totally skip out on IT. And as the tool that really relates to what we're talking about today, there's more than 15 dashboards out of the box for showing business value back to the people that you're responsible for managing relationships with, whether that be IT, facilities, HR. Instrumental BRM, Peter is with us. They have been delivering the BRMP and the new CBRM certifications for 3-4 years Peter, you can correct me if I'm wrong there. So have trained probably a good portion of you guys on the call if you've ever been through a BRMP or a CBRM training. They do coaching and advisory services. If you're looking at, Peter touches on the BRM Institute maturity model. If you need an assessment to figure out where you are, there's some services from Instrumental there. They do workshops, value management, what is BRM, whether that be a short 4-hour intro session for executives down to long-standing engagements. And one of my favorite things, and the reasons we partnered with Instrumental, was their out-of-the-box approach to establishing BRM as a formal competency. So they have the Grab at Pizza business simulation, which is really cool. You take all of the acronym soup world that we live in and get rid of it and talk about how do we meet our SLAs of delivering a pizza in 30 minutes while our competitor just offered online ordering and we don't have it. They also have a session we did at BRM Connect in Banff last year where most of the organizations that Simon and I have talked to over the last 18 months since getting involved in this really don't have a formal strategy and roadmap that's documentable and evangelizable. And they create a very fun way with what looks like a game. Peter will tell you not call it a game, but that really owns in on what do we need to accomplish, what are the things that are involved to accomplish it, who's involved, and how long is it going to take? I mean, a story for me was we had talked about getting 4 days out of a month of the CIO's time. Is that realistic? So it's just a really out-of-the-box approach instead of let's just train everybody and hope they come back and change everything and fix the world for us. So this is my last slide before I turn it over to Peter, just to tee it up for the conversation that he's going to do. If you read one of my emails or responded on social media, you saw that the first line is that it's no longer about alignment. The new word for it is convergence. If you've been to an ITSM, HDI, ISACA, any type of IT conference, you've probably heard the word alignment a million times by now. But as long as we continue to, quote unquote, align ourselves with the business, IT is never really going to have a seat at the business table. I've found very recently that most of the people I'm working with on BRM opportunities right now, the CIO is still reporting to the CFO. We need to get that person a real seat at the business table. So the only line they're reporting to would be potentially the CEO. Of all of that I just said, the thing that makes most sense to me is this picture right here. Alignment. 2 straight lines, right? They never connect. Convergence is where those lines actually meet. With that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, give it over to Peter.
Thank you, John. So I am Peter Lijnse, managing partner of Instrumental BRM. Yes, I do play trombone, and it is just a little bit as an amateur, basically, because I just enjoy doing that, and that is in the picture indeed me playing there, for the photo at least. I'm also part of the knowledge management team, as you said. If you need to contact me, feel free to send me an email on my email account, and if you want to use Twitter, etc. during this session, feel free to actually copy me in if you feel the need to that. The biggest thing for most people is why there's an I and a J next to each other. That is still something that is part of my Dutch heritage. That means that IJ combination is basically a Y, so don't try to pronounce it, the J, just keep it with Lijnse or call me Peter, which is way easier. Okay, I'm going to go right in because John set it up really well based on the convergence side, and the question is, okay, if we have alignment and convergence, why do we need to talk about convergence? Why do we need to actually get to that point? There's a lot of information in the market, I mean, and around why we need to work closer to the business, why we need to actually converge business and IT. But the thing is, okay, what is really at this moment the key need for this? And that is digital transformation. A lot of you are saying, yeah, you know what, we need to do something around digital transformation. That is not going from a 0 to a 1 and from a 1 to a 0. That's not what they mean by this. This is digital transformation, is the change associated with the application of digital technology in all aspects of human society. Now, what does that mean for you as an IT organization? That your business groups are going to look at how can we transform, how can we use technology better in a different way? Can we use augmented reality? Can we use virtual reality? Can we change the way we actually do business? And that's what I'm going to talk about, and how important that is for technology providers internally in an organization to help their business partners to make sure they get successful with that digital transformation. That requires a need for value of that technology. And the thing is, what most people forget is the fact is that there is no value in itself in technology. There is value in the use of technology. What does that mean? I can throw any application, technology, solution to people, but if I'm really giving them that technology and they don't use it, it is not going to be of any value of the organization. And I think a lot of you might have experienced this, where you give the business a new technology and the only thing they do after a while is say, can we get something else now, because we don't get the value out of this. So when we look at digital transformation, which a lot of organizations are looking at, when we look at the change of technology in the society basically, but also in the business itself, we need to start making sure that we use the technology correctly and that it delivers value. The only way to really do that is to ensure that people work well together, that we see starting from ideas that we have to creative thinking, new solutions, all the way to bringing this solution into the business. We need to have good relationships between the different teams that are going to be involved. So for me, it is extremely important that when we start looking at the whole idea to solution and using the technology process, we need to make sure that relationships are being managed. We all know that a lot of our organizations actually have different silos. Someone is generating the idea, someone else is going to drive the thinking, the design, etc. So we need to start thinking about how are we going to do this. Now, I do want to start a little bit with a few polls, and the key thing is because when we talk about BRM and ITSM, I want to know basically a little bit who is on the phone. My first poll I'm going to ask is, and I'm just going to start it right now. You should see a poll now, and you can basically click this in. So are you more in the business relationship management side? Are you more in the service management side? Are you maybe part of executive IT management? Or is it other? Whatever other is. And I'll wait a few moments to see the result of the poll. I normally go to about 80–90%, so I know what everyone has done. So that seems to be where I am right now, so I'm closing it. I'm going to share the results actually, because I want you to see this as well. A lot of you are in business relationship management, which is great, it's awesome. There's a few people, I mean, there's a percentage here of service management, executive management, and others. So it's good to see who is actually on the call. And then let's do another one, because I have two more. Do you know which technology you're currently using for IT service management? And I might actually come back to that, so I'll see. You guys are good. You're clicking fast, and that makes my life a lot easier. I hate otherwise the silence, etc. So I just want to make sure that we have all of that. Okay, we got about the same amount. Close poll. One more. I'll share the results of this one. So we see different tools possibly being used, and not surprising, I think, for a lot of us. And then the last one I'm going to do is, do you use anything for business relationship management? We have a large group of business relationship managers on the webinar here, so I'm just going to ask basically this poll as well. If there were only a few business relationship managers, I wouldn't have done this. And this is where it's normally gets extremely interesting. I might not go to the end on this one. We'll have a look. Okay, I'm closing this poll so that we have a bit of an idea, and I'll share the results of this one as well. We see that a large percentage of you have nothing to support BRM. So John will be very happy to see that because he will have something like, hey, there's some people that actually don't have anything yet. So, okay, that gives me a little bit of an idea who's on the call. Now, one of the things I want to do is, and you should see my screen again at this moment, if all is well. No, I need to hide the results. Here we go. Sorry. One of the things I'm going to do is first talk about maturity model. I've simplified it a little bit to just get an idea basically what is happening, and then I'll do one more poll around that. So the thing is, when you look at a relationship maturity model like I show here on the screen, this is adapted from the BRM Institute. There is a formal model that has way more information, and you can get that through the BRM Institute. But for me, this was something that I wanted to make sure that I'm going to talk only about these different levels. So when we have a business group and an IT group, we quite often see that the relationship between those different groups can go through this maturity model. Yeah, so we can have ad hoc relationships, basically mean the business calls you when they need you, to order taker, where we say, hey, I want you to do this. I'm at this moment, I want to make sure that you have clear, basically, that you're going to give me this solution. That's quite often the part from the business. In a service provider environment, we quite often see that we are, from a provider perspective, we have a little bit more control over priorities. We have a little bit more control over how we can actually deliver services to the business. The stages after that is more that trusted advisor, where the business actually sees, okay, this is what the IT organization can help me with. I'm going to include you in there. And then the last one is strategic partner, where we actually really working together, and we are actually getting to that business IT convergence. In that stage, quite often there is no difference between business and technology necessarily anymore. From a business relationship management perspective, we're quite often very close to working together into one team. Now, what you see here is that these maturity levels, I quite often use restaurant business as an example. If you're going to McDonald's and you're ordering a burger, you're an order taker. Yeah, they don't know when you're coming, but they know, okay, this is what we're going to deliver. You could argue that it might even be a service provider. But the thing is, it's McDonald's. If you go into McDonald's and ask the teenager behind the till, can you recommend a milkshake with this burger? They're going to look at you like, what planet are you from? Yeah. No, you're just saying, okay, this is what I want. Here's the menu. This is what you're going to get. And quite often, this is why you go to McDonald's, for instance. If you go into a restaurant, in a high-end restaurant, where the chef actually comes to your table, asks what you like, what you dislike, and what meal you can actually have, and you can have a totally different experience. You have influence on that. They actually are, both of you asking basically the right questions. So even in that, we see a different relationship. Now, when we look at this, the bottom part here is very much focused on services, delivering services. The top part is really focused on more value delivery. And one of the challenges we have, specifically in the IT service management space, is that a lot of IT service management groups have the tendency to deliver to that service provider stage. That they are going to say, yes, we're going to have this perfect situation where we are the service provider, we're telling them basically what they can and cannot have, but it still is not that strategic partnership where we both actually work together to deliver value. So a lot of ITSM groups are focused on that end state of service provider, while BRMs, or business relationship management, is way more focused on how do I get to that strategic partner stage. I'm just going to ask and one more poll, and then I'll continue with some of the things I want to really talk about. In the relationship maturity level, yeah, which level do you think your organization is currently at? And don't say, okay, well, one group is there and one group is there, and that's always difficult. But in general, where do you see your organization being most at? Is that on ad hoc, order takers, service providers, trusted advisor, and strategic partner? Okay, so I'm seeing some interesting things here, which is actually good. I'm going to close the poll, and I'm going to share the results. So what we see here is that in the relationship model, we see a lot of people actually in that. I mean, 50% in that service provider stage, which really means you're on the cusp of how can I take that next step? How am I going to change my behavior to actually go to that next level? And that means that you quite often need not only to change your behavior maybe when you're a business relationship manager or have relationships with the business, you actually also need to start thinking about how you can change the behavior of the rest of the provider side, because they need to start becoming more value focused. So a lot of that I will use in the next couple of slides. Now, one of the things is when we start looking at this, we need to figure out how can the BRM team and the IT service management team work together instead of starting fighting over, okay, we're doing this, you're doing that. To be able to understand what the challenge is sometimes between the business relationship management team and the IT service management team, we need to start thinking about what is the difference between the two. Why are we different? And there is different perspectives. If we look at BRM teams, we quite often see that the BRM team is very much looking outside in. You're looking at the business first and then thinking about what the solution is you can start delivering. ITSM teams have the tendency to still very much looking at from the inside out. Now, both perspectives are good. I'm not saying that one is completely wrong, but I think what we need to do is get a better understanding on the service management side, that how can we get that value focus in there? How can we get more business understanding in there? And on the BRM side, okay, what can we really do from an IT service management side that can help the business? So both perspectives need to get together. And that means that we need to start thinking about how do we talk to each other? How do we actually see things? One of the challenges is that a lot of you will have IT service management team, and if you're part of an IT service management team, you know that a lot of you will be using, for instance, ITIL, and a great set of materials that can absolutely help you to look at processes. And when you really look at the ITIL books, and specifically if you look at service strategy, it talks about business value. It talks about being focused on the business, and that everything should drive that. Now, not everyone has introduced it that way, and that makes it a little bit of a challenge. The other thing is, from a BRM perspective, we quite often see that we're using the same terminology, but in a slightly different way. So, for instance, if we talk about demand management, we often see that demand management within the BRM world is around new investment, larger business projects to generate more revenue or productivity, etc. Within the business, and we're doing the investments in the solutions, and that's quite often what is the demand from the business. In ITIL, demand management is very operational focused. It's okay, how is the business using it when it's actually in production? So that is a difference. The other thing is, in the ITIL books, business relationship management is seen as a process or a function. You can find that in the book in Service Strategy. I never use the term process for a business relationship management group. I talk about business relationship management as an organizational capability, or as the role of business relationship management that fits in there. So think about that. Certain of the terminology between those different groups is different, and you need to be able to translate that. You need to be able to actually help them. Okay, well, this is what you need to do. So those are some of the things that you will encounter. One of the first thing we need to do is how we're actually working together. What is relationship management? And that's the next slide. This slide is something we developed over time. We started to look at, okay, how can we clarify relationships within the provider and on the business side. And what you see here in the middle is we talk about business planning, transformation, and operations. Really what it is, it's plan, build, run. Yeah, the plan, build, run phases that we have. Now, we do see on the provider side, we have a business relationship management team, we have IT architecture, we have executive team, we have project management with its different roles, and we have the service delivery management scope, and we quite often have different roles in there. Yeah, this is quite often what we see. Now, this doesn't mean that these people are more in the planning side, these are more in the transformation side, and necessarily these are more on the operation side. I think there is some overlap, but large part of their work is focused on these specific areas. I mean, service delivery will also have influence on planning and on transformation, and I will show you that. On the business side, we have business executives all the way to end users. How we work together here is about that relationship. And we quite often see that business relationship managers are saying, well, I'm accountable for this whole life cycle. Yeah, I'm from a relationship perspective. But it doesn't mean that I'm the only one that has the relationships. Everyone will have relationships with the business. So a service delivery manager will discuss things on an operational level, maybe with the business as well. Project managers during the project management phase will have relationships with people on the business, again regarding the transformation that we're trying to do. So we're quite often using this to clarify in the organization what is really happening here, and who is doing what. And the fact is, from a business relationship management perspective, we quite often see we're filling the holes. If there's certain areas where there is not enough management of the relationship on an operational level, then automatically the BRM will actually get pulled into that. So we need to think about, okay, how are we going to work together? This becomes a team approach. That basically means that on the business side and the business team and the provider team need to work together in that convergence state, yeah, when you become that strategic partner. And that's what I'm going to talk about, okay, how can we do this? Now the first thing is, and this is a little bit of a very high level actually, but if we take 3 roles, and I'm only using 3 roles here, I take the business relationship manager, I take a project manager, and I take a service delivery manager. And I'm using the term service delivery manager for the operational IT, tactical IT issues that need to be handled. Quite often way more focused on when it is in production. Now we've seen different terminology in the market, but at this moment, in most organizations, I've seen people calling that role service delivery management, so that's why I'm using that. Now, if I look at the phases plan, build, and run, there's 2 other phases that I added here. We have strategy and we have optimize. So when we start looking at it from a strategy, business relationship management drives business and IT strategy. Make sure that it's clear, that we communicate that in the organization, that we use that to drive investments, which means we're planning those investments. Yeah, we're defining the value of the new investments and we start introducing that. That starts then to build on maintaining that focus on value during build and test. As a BRM, you quite often are less involved in that. From a run perspective, I need to, as a BRM, need to very clearly understand what is the business value and how do I communicate that business value. Very business focused, very much focused on ensuring that the value is realized. Now, when I started getting into a value optimization, I drive business optimization efforts. Yeah, I look at where can we optimize. Is there training necessary? Is there education necessary? Is there better communication necessary? When I look at project managers, I quite often see that I have and start in project management where I'm starting to utilize strategy to define projects. I then start to drive that project initiative in the planning phase, of course. I coordinate, build, and test activities. And I might be involved in run, but normally I'm only involved if there really is a warranty period for a short time frame. After that, I'm not involved anymore. I quite often am also not involved as a project manager in optimization efforts, and I'm going to talk about what to do there. Now, the next part is service delivery management. We're utilizing strategy here to guide delivery. So you still need to understand what the strategy is. I still need to provide input to new investments and drive those operational changes that in the planning phase. We quite often see that business projects and IT projects are very much managed by the project management office, for instance, but we have operational changes that need to happen, an upgrade of a file server, etc., which is still part of the delivery side, and we need to plan those as well. And that's quite often where we see service delivery managers involved. It doesn't have to be them, but they need to actually say, yeah, but these changes need to actually take place. We then start providing operational input. Yeah, we're starting to look at in the build and test. Okay, yeah, this is great, but you need to actually change this so that it becomes more clear, basically, how we can use that. Running, this is where service delivery management manages the operational changes for implementation. But also we have unplanned work like incidents, suddenly things break, and we quite often see that service delivery management needs to focus on measurement. So in the run phase, there's a very much a focus in the service delivery management side around managing the delivery, managing the operational changes, managing the incidents. It is still a little bit inside-out looking, although they need to understand the business value. We also start seeing here that service delivery management quite often sees the need for delivery optimization efforts. Yeah, how can we further optimize? So what we see here is that the business relationship manager, specifically in Run and Optimize, is way more focused, okay, how can we optimize the business? And that service delivery management is way more focused, okay, how can we optimize our delivery capability? That is something that we need to clarify. One of the challenges with a lot of IT organizations is that there is no clear mandate clarification or role clarification between that business relationship management team and the service delivery management team. And this is where the challenge arises for a lot of business relationship managers, because if something breaks, they get pulled in the operational side because no one is managing that. No one is communicating to the business, these are some of the operational issues, etc. No one is really looking at the value for the business, or how can we make it better for the business, which is a BRM task. We are quite often only focused, okay, how can we deliver the solution better? So when you have these two teams, business relationship management and a service management team, and that's not only the service delivery manager, that could be multiple people, we need to make sure that we are clear on how each of us have their own focus area, but also making sure that we're getting clear what the effort is that we actually need to put in there. So this is a way to actually start looking at, okay, how do we manage relationships between those different groups. We're doing a training courses around this where we actually go into more detail in each of these phases, and where we're going to look at, okay, how can you work better together? I'm just giving a high-level overview on this. The thing is, we need to start looking at how can we drive value further. Yeah, how can we actually drive the value in the organization? And that's a couple of slides basically I'm going to show you here. And that really is focused on making sure that we are delivering value together. So the first thing is I'm going to look at is every interaction with the business, and every interaction we do is based on value, needs to focus on value. Is there value for us to do this? If I'm talking to a business group from a service management perspective, I need to be able to say, yes, you want to change the color of your screen. Is there value to that? Yeah. If I'm looking at incidents on the operational side, is there value in changing this permanently, or do we just do the quick fix? So every interaction needs to have that value perspective in there. To be able to help you with that, I think one of the best slides from the BRM Institute again, but and this is a simplification. We have value-based discussions and we have solution-based discussions. But the fact is, we need to know this chain. We need to understand what the business drivers are, how they're going to get that initiative in. We then need to understand what we need to do from a technology enablement perspective. So what kind of processes do we need to have in place on the service management side? What kind of capabilities do we need to have? All the way to how can we deliver that through solutions. In a perfect world, you would have value-based discussions. BRM would talk about what and how with the business, together with the service delivery manager and the project manager, and then we actually start to define what and how for the provider side. That's the perfect world. In a lot of cases, we still see solution-based discussions, and even in that perfect world, and even in a strategic partner, we sometimes need to drive certain solutions to the business. Yeah, augmented reality. What can you do with that? So the thing is, what we see of this this chain is that if we clarify this, business drivers to solutions, we have a way to communicate within the provider side how certain technology is linked to certain business drivers. And I think this is one of the things, it's a simple way of actually showing this. This helps BRMs to communicate to the service management teams, but it also helps service management teams to drive around what is important for us. Now, I'm going to go through a little bit sources of value. I'm not going to go in a lot of detail on this, but one of the things is we need to understand what the source of the value is. Yeah, where there is value, where there is there value in process improvement? Is there value that we can generate for the business in decision making? Sources of value is something I work with BRM teams with in a lot of cases, where we define, okay, what kind of questions do you need to ask? Again, this helps service management, for instance, to understand this solution is primarily for improved decision making. Yeah, so this is what we need to do to make that efficient and effective. You can have internal value, which is more internal in the organization. So what business value do you get internally? External is your external customers. Yeah, your patients, your citizens, your consumers, the people that actually get information from you. So this normally, I mean, I can talk 20 minutes around this, but I don't have the time for that. But the thing is for me, it's important to understand where are we delivering value? Where are we seeing that source of the value? And we can start communicating that, and that links to that previous slide, business drivers to solution. In the next part is quite often where we see BRMs very much involved is you have business value sources, you start looking at new ideas, you start looking at opportunities, you start building value plans, and then you can go through a business case, etc. Quite often BRM teams, or this is a strategy and planning activities, where we look at, okay, where can we generate value? This is what we're going to develop. It's great. It's absolutely great. But there's ideas also for operational changes. There's ideas for IT projects, etc., that also can generate value. So we need to have that full understanding. What are all the different types of work we have? Which ones are important? Which are we going to work on from an opportunity perspective? How are we going to develop a value plan based on that? And we're going to update that value plan during the build, test, and implement, because I showed you that in the matrix I showed. You need to maintain that value. If someone suddenly says, we're taking this out of the project, it's not going to really help you. Yeah. So this is great. Now we're really this is more on the demand management side and build and test. The one thing I wanted to briefly talk about was, after we introduce it in the organization, we get value realization. Yeah, we get to the point where we say we're realizing value. And when we say we have value realized, we quite often see that people say, hey, it's business as usual now. Yeah, I don't see the difference anymore. In the value optimization phase, so that's after it went into production, we need to have a group that says, okay, let's make sure that we optimize the value. Let's get new ideas for optimization. And that optimization requires two teams to work well together on the provider side, and that's the BRM team and the service delivery management team, or the service management team. Both of them need to work together here to say, how do we show that value is realized to measurements and processes? But also, how can we make sure that when it's business as usual for the business, how can we find other ways to improve? And again, this is not something just for the business relationship manager, but also for the service delivery management team. Some of you might say, you know what, we have in the service management team, we have CSI. Yeah, we have a continual service improvement team. And I normally see that, again, that the CSI team has the tendency to be way more technology and internal focused. And what I mean by that, you're improving your processes, you're improving your, what you quite often call your services in your provider side. You're looking at measurements, how can I further improve? A value optimization team also looks, by using the business relationship manager, in what can we change on the business side that makes it better, that are going to use the system better. And that's quite often where we see the use of technology. So for me, a CSI team, value optimization team, you can call both, but I think we need to have a team that looks at how the business is using it and how can we optimize there, and we need to have a team that looks at how can the provider actually makes further improvements. And this is where we often see the challenge in a lot of organizations, because we're often only looking more internally and not enough to the business value side. And this is, I think, why it's so important for business relationship management and service management to work together on value optimization, and together with the business. The business needs to be involved in that as well, of course, so that we have a better understanding. So they have a different focus, they have a different team, but you need to understand the different perspectives, but you also need to make sure that they're very much working together to achieve the value we're looking for. One of the things that we often take organizations through is business value leakage. And value leakage for me is around making sure that we don't drop things, that there is not a lot of challenges basically that suddenly happen. So value leakage happens in a lot of different areas. Value leakage specifically for service management, but also for business relationship management. Unclear translation of strategy and goals into actions. Yeah, and I'm just going to give you a couple of examples. The services do not deliver clearly what the business is looking for. Yeah, therefore we're losing value. We haven't defined it clearly, and I don't use the term services that often anymore. I see a need in the market to look at way more product development approaches and start looking at, okay, we have products, and what is the product life cycle, what is the economic life cycle, how we're going to actually add features, and what is the cost of delay of those features. That's really what I'm looking for. If we don't understand cost of delay of a certain product, if we or a feature that we want to introduce, we're seeing value leakage in the organization. Organizational design, unclear roles and responsibilities. Certain roles are not in place. Some of you as BRMs might actually not have a service delivery management group that can help you with some of the operational and tactical issues. The right competencies and skills. What are some of these competencies? What are some of the skills that we require? Yeah, I mean, IT people sometimes need to have that relationship management skill to actually maintain that good relationship. How are we doing on education and training? Not just on the IT or the provider side, but also how can we educate the business better so that they use the systems better? How do we communicate? Yeah. In my opinion, a lot of service management teams are doing a lot of communication, and it's really negative communication. I don't care about how many incidents you solved and how fast. As a business person, I would look at that like the system failed. So you're telling me it failed this much. That's not good. So the fact is, yes, I love it that you have those measurements, but what you really need to do is provide communication that shows successes, that are positive, that help the business to understand what their value is of the technology. So again, I think the service management team and the BRM team have information that together they can provide way better communication to the business. Now, of course, it also needs to be in business terms. And that is sometimes that translation step we need to have, but you have to work together. Measurements and reporting. BRMs quite often are dependent on service management teams to actually get, for instance, real-time measurements or measurements around how things are happening at this moment in the production side. And again, I think that you need to help each other there to actually say, this is what we're trying to accomplish. For me, and I'm just going to stop so we have a little bit time for questions, if there's questions, and feel free to actually put those in the in the question box, and we'll actually have a look at those. I also want to make sure that I'm finishing on time, but the thing here is, for me, we need to start looking at achieving value for the business requires that BRM and ITSM need to work together. And if we don't do that, we're just going to have two silos that do not help each other. If you look at one of the engagements Simon Kent did with the university, there's webinars on that, etc. They needed to actually combine these two. Yeah, they needed to work both on the BRM side and the service management side. Yes, there's some operational information that needed to help there. You need to have an assurance, basically, that value is being delivered. And I think ignoring each other, fighting with each other, telling the other group you need to do this, it needs to become this effort of let's sit down together. I saw a great video just recently that someone sent to me. This happened in my hometown of Calgary. Two people were arguing about through Twitter, basically, around cycle paths, etc. And both had an opposing view, were actually complaining to each other, realized they were in city. They decided to actually sit down and together and to talk about it. And the fact is, at that moment, by talking about it, they had a good conversation. It was not about, okay, I'm just anonymous and I can just type whatever I want. No, by sitting down together and talking about, okay, what are some of the challenges we have? What do we need to do? I'm coming from this perspective. You're coming from that perspective. How can we help each other? How can we work together to make sure that we work better with the business and that the business and the provider side are working better together as well? So that is what I wanted to show, and I know some of the things I went over maybe very quickly, but that's part of a webinar, of course. If you're more interested in this, we are doing courses basically around this 4-hour online where we actually go into more detail. Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about role descriptions. We're talking about how to further develop basically your different groups, etc. So that's for me. I'm just going to go through questions and answers and see if there's any questions available. And are there any questions?
I see a question in the box here, Peter. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear.
Okay, awesome. So one of the questions here asked by Pete in New York was, they have a new BRM competence that was initiated by their CIO. However, they're trying to come up with how to initially present the concept of BRM to the ITSM team. Do you have any thoughts around that?
Yes, but I would not do it in a presentation. I would first discuss with them basically what BRM is. I've seen in a lot of organizations where other groups in IT get very nervous when they hear we're going to get a BRM team, because it's quite often it's not clear what the role is, what the mandate is of that group, how we're going to work together. So you need to get a very clear understanding, okay, what can we do? How can we communicate this clearly? But also that requires a discussion, okay, what is the other groups are doing and how they're working at this moment with the business. You're not going to take away their relationships. That's one of the key things that we always need to emphasize. You're not taking away your key relationships. You're enhancing basically that the team is working well together. So you're building more capabilities on top of it, and you also, as a BRM, quite often you're going to communicate certain information to the service management team that you hear from the business that they might actually not be involved with. So that is quite often what we see.
Another question came in here, Peter.
Yep.
So Do you see the challenges with the former ITIL definition, though? Do you see any challenges with the former ITIL definition of BRM as it's in the service strategy book? And what do you think could be changed about the way ITIL discusses BRM to become more modernized and digitized?
I think one of the things I always say, okay, don't use one framework, use multiple, because different things actually are better defined sometimes in other frameworks. I think ITIL is very strong in certain areas, and definitely those are processes. They have the tendency to talk about everything in processes, but if you really read the books, they're more what I call capabilities. Capabilities for me is what you do, and process is more how you do it. So when you have an incident management process, you can say, yeah, this is how we do this, and that's very simple sometimes to actually, well, to a certain extent simple, but one of the things I think we need to look at is telling basically some of the service management people, yes, if you really want to look at business relationship management, okay, we're using information from the BRM Institute, and that is better aligned basically to what the market actually is trying to accomplish. And there's more information there. So I normally say, okay, don't talk about processes when we talk about BRM. Business relationship management is a capability, and it actually runs through the organization. So I think there's lots of things that we can change, but on the other hand, I mean, a lot of good things in ITIL as well. So I'm not saying that they need to change it, but people need to understand that it's not always implemented exactly as it is in a book, and that applies to BRM as well. I mean, that it's both. So use multiple frameworks and making sure that you take the content which is the best part of each of those. I've seen some questions.
Now 12 o'clock Eastern.
Yep.
So we're going to go ahead and cut it short here. I do see a question that came in from Francisco, and Jeremy just sent in questions. We'll follow up directly with both of you guys offline. Everybody taking your time. Peter, any final closing remarks?
So some people actually asked about the slide deck, but I'm pretty sure you know what's going to happen better with that than me. I mean, we will have the recording up as well. So.
For sure. We'll have that available sometime mid next week. I'll follow up with everybody with a copy of the presentation and the video.
Great.
Thank you everybody for taking your time. Go enjoy March Madness if that's your thing, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.